Growing emotional maturity, and I'm going to give you a condensed version of about 6 days of neuroscience in 7 minutes, all right? Everybody grows old. Moment by moment we grow old. That doesn't necessarily mean we're growing up. And growing up is actually about what goes on the inside and the choices that I make, and a lot to do with what goes on in my brain and goes throughout my body. 3 facets that actually influence emotional maturity. The first one is genetics. So that what happens is that we have a set of DNA that our parents have given us that we have no choice. It's potluck. Some of us have a good genetic bank. Some of us have a terrible genetic bank. However, the good news is that that genetic bank is shaped by epigenetics, which is the field where we're actually learning about what happens and how nature and how our environment interacts with genes and turn genes on and off, and we grow. And what we do know now is that an enriched environment gives the best outcome for us. But not everybody grows up in an enriched environment. Some of us grow up in a less than satisfactory environment. And the latest field has been neuroplasticity, which is of neuroscience. It's about how does the brain grow and change. I want to talk about genetics first of all. Richard Davidson is a researcher who's been doing 30 years of research on what's become known as affective neuroscience, so the emotions of the brain. And he discovered that people have a base genetic makeup of our emotions and emotional responses in the world. There are 6 scales, and those 6 scales relate to 6 different parts of the brain. The first scale that he has is resilience. So that's the ability to bounce back quickly or not bounce back quickly. And what he discovered, that part of the brain that lights up is depending on your genetics. If it's one hemisphere, it's positive. If it's the other hemisphere, it's negative. But what we know is that we can change that. That's epigenetics and neuroplasticity. The second scale is outlook. Some people have a positive outlook, some had a negative outlook. I grew up in a family with a dad who has a negative outlook. My dad's only happy when he's got something to complain about. And so part of my epigenetics is I made a decision that I was not going to be like him. Social intuition style is those people who are really quite socially aware and those who are not. It's like those people who bump into something and get a bruise. Oh, where'd that bruise come from? As opposed to people going, yeah, I'm really, really aware. And that goes with social awareness as well. Then there's sensitivity to context. There's people who pick up cues and the context and get it. And then there's also attention style, where the people can be focused or not. I want to quickly explain to you the brain and how the brain develops. First part of the brain in the stem cord is developed at 3 weeks in utero. And that particular part of the brain is called the automatic or survival brain. It's the fastest part of the brain, takes care of everything that we're doing right now that we don't have to think about. Second part of the brain to develop is that this is fully developed at birth but not fully functioning, is the impulsive brain. And the impulsive brain is the emotional part of the brain. It's the thing that picks up the cues and responds. As a baby, if someone smiles at me, I go, oh, they're safe, I can smile back. If somebody frowns at me or scares me, is that part of the brain lights up, fires off the survival brain, and I cry. And unfortunately, having a moustache, I upset a lot of babies, okay? This is dominant till age 4. And then age 4 is that it keeps going, but then the smart brain starts to kick in. And the smart brain is the higher power of functioning of the brain. It has the power of veto. But here's the real kicker. When my impulsive brain fires up, my smart brain switches offline. The moment I perceive a threat is that my impulsive brain takes over, my survival brain kicks in, and then I respond out of survival and threat. And that is emotional immaturity. That doesn't help me to respond differently. This next diagram is really, really important. If you take the green bit as the sweet spot, that's where life is good. That's where you can interact and you can think and feel and do everything at the same time. You manage all your emotional arousal. But if you hit the edges, let's say that somebody triggers and hits the top edge, then more likely you'll dysregulate and you'll spin out and you'll become very emotional and reactive. Or if you hit the bottom edge, is that you might shut down, close out, withdraw. Emotional maturity is about actually being able to cope with the tension of the stuff being hit on the edges and learning to react appropriately rather than just retreating to safety. And so therefore it's really, really important that actually I start to understand what are the things that trigger me, how do I choose to respond, and how do I actually grow. Growth emotionally does not happen when I sit around feeling safe and nothing challenges me. The gift of challenge is it gives me a chance to rewire my brain and to grow up on the inside. And challenge is going to come from strange places. In education, it can come from any one of our students. It can come from parents. It can come from colleagues. It can come from emails, you name it. The question is when I'm triggered on the top or the bottom of the sweet spot, how do I regulate and manage myself to stay in the sweet spot? I've got a summary here, and it's colour-coded to match the part of the brain. Emotional maturity involves, so this is the green part of the brain, the smart brain. It involves managing my impulsive and survival brain, engaging my smart brain so that I change what I've learnt procedurally and respond from a position of emotional security, the best in me, not reactivity, which is the worst in me. And in our personal relationships, is that what happens is that we so often trigger the worst in each other, and then we have those times where things just sort of dig our way to China and melt down because we're not circuit breaking, because as soon as I'm threatened, my smart brain goes offline. And the key to emotional maturity is slowing everything down and bringing my smart brain back online so that I can think and feel at the same time, and I can stay in that sweet spot. And over time, my sweet spot gets bigger. That's emotional maturity. Thank you.